into the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries. Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Here I go again!
And on my own. Down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone. Okay, I should stop. I got enough comments from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this past week to know that I shouldn't do karaoke to any more songs while at AfterBuzz. Well, hey there, Ash vs. Evil Dead fans. Welcome to another episode of the Ash vs. Evil Dead AfterBuzz recap show. Tonight, we are talking about episode 4, Brujo. How are you all doing tonight?
That was trippy.
That was a trip. That was a trip. Well, let me go ahead and introduce my fantastic panel. To my left, Lex Michael.
Hi, yes, that is who I am. I am Lex Michael. I'm all over the internet talky stuff where I talk about the stuff that I talk about. My handle everywhere where I do that is at the Lex Michael.
And Lacretia Lyon.
Yes, and if you can spell it, you can find me. It's Lacretia Lyon, and I'm all over the internet like that, just like this guy.
And I'm Megan Salinas. You guys can tweet at me at the Menguin. That's TheMenguin. Sadly, Elena and Emma are off at Oklahoma City Comic-Con, being awesome and just totally crushing it while they're there. So be sure to follow them as well. They'll be back next time, something along those lines. But we also have a very, very, well, it's Thanksgiving. I don't know where anybody's at. But we also have a very, very special guest on Skype with us tonight. Joining us tonight is Roger Murray, who is the makeup effects and the makeup effects designer for the show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, how are you? I've got no live feed, but you're in New Zealand.
Yeah, they see you, but you won't see them.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, we see you just fine. How you doing tonight, Roger?
Really good. I've just, it's the end of my day, so I've just finished my first Monday of the week.
Ah, fantastic. Mondays.
Yeah. Mondays, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. So we want to know, what brought you to Evil Dead? Was it something that you were approached about, or was it something when you heard about it, you're like, I have to get involved in that?
I've got a long association with the producers, with both Sam and Rob. Right back to Xena days, I was the props designer on Xena. And worked on the Hercules TV series as a props guy, as a props maker, and they asked me to set up the workshops for Xena when it first started, and I designed all the props for Xena for 6 years. So I've got a long association with Rob, done about 4 or 5 films with them, a couple of TV shows. So yeah, here I am.
Well, and a lot of the work for this show, it looks spectacular. It's like, yeah, it's like going back in time and watching those movies, but now everything has been upgraded with modern techniques and effects, and it just looks phenomenal.
There's so much detail in every frame of this show. It's insanely impressive. Yeah,
it's been a huge undertaking, and I think it was the president right from the start to try and keep a little bit of the flavour and the tone of the original shows, films, but just give it something more and really make it a really action-packed half hour where it was entertaining. I mean, we want to make something that's fun and entertaining, so hope it's working.
Of course it is. I'd rather see this than CGI. I mean, it looks more realistic, even though, I mean, it is demons, but hey.
Yeah, well, we've got a great association with the guys that do the visual effects, PRP effects down here, and we've worked on a lot of films and things together. So, it's great to work with different types of people in the industry and come together. We've tried to keep it as much practical as possible, but we're also realistic about time frames, and it's about collaboration, really.
Yeah. And it's really important to make it everything on screen, even when you're looking at something as outlandish as a demon with no eyes, you really have to sell it and make it look as believable as possible, because the second there's a bad prop or a bad effect, everyone's going to call it out.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, there's definitely been a really high bar raised for the whole show. So we wanted to, we went through and when we had the series overview, and we went, oh, wow, we really want to make a Lygos like a really defining creature for the show, like one of quite a few to come up. You know, yeah, well, I don't know, it's great. It's been so much fun designing it. It's a dream come true, really. I never thought years and years ago that I'd actually get to work on Evil Dead in this capacity. So very lucky, but we do have a very high bar, so we have to, you know, we keep going, and as the series keeps going along, I mean, there's some crazy stuff coming up. Man.
Well, talking about Elagos, what was the inspiration for this particular design? Because he's unlike any other Deadite we've ever seen up to this point.
Yeah, well, I think it's about it's kind of just something, just trying to renew it a little bit, and some of the aspects of him came out of lines that were in the script about having no eyes, and a reference to Slender Man, who was like an online sort of eyeless creature with a big mouth. So we kind of took that, and then I initially had sort of dreams about a sort of a alien type sort of creature that was basically more sensory. So he had no eyes and he had a mouth, but he was sort of able to be telepathic and have a bit of psychic sort of knowledge. So, and also just being really disgusting at the same time. So we just try to, I don't know, we've just been having fun with it, and we've got some great sculptors down here. We had some really strong designs. And I think it all just came together. We've got big hurdles with, a high production weeks, the time we have to shoot stuff in a week. So we have to come up with quite clever makeups that we're able to apply kind of easily and that have the most impact. So that was part of the equation, I suppose, for, designing him.
So what you're saying is that he's literally the stuff of nightmares. That's what this creature is.
I call them dreams. But
Well, I just out of curiosity, and without talking about stuff that's coming down the line, what were you most excited for fans of the franchise to see when the series came back that you worked on?
I think my initial feeling about the show when it came down here was actually working with Sam, because he's never, even though we've worked on lots of projects together, it's usually been with Rob Tapert. So when Sam said I was going to come down and actually work down here, that was, for me, for the build up to the show, was the most exciting thing, because I'd really wanted to meet him, and I'd worked on all these shows and I'd never met him, and he was going to come down and direct. So that was really exciting, him and Bruce together. For me, I think it was going back to the Necronomicon, and we made his gun, his boomstick, and the props department made his chainsaw. So I mean, it was just all the iconic things, and sort of being able to relive all those things. Have them in the workshop and go out on set and spread a lot of blood around. I mean, it was pretty exciting with Bruce. So there's all these little things that went along the series, and it was like you're standing there going, man, I can't believe this is crazy. This is crazy. I mean, we're blowing stuff up, we're chopping people up, we're chopping things off, we're burning stuff, and I don't know. It's been pretty crazy. That's all I can say. It's been amazing and crazy.
Now, we a couple weeks ago, Emma brought up a question about the way the blood is made on the show, and I was wondering if you could give any hints or insight into what Evil Dead specifically does for the blood, all of the blood work on the show, because there's a lot of it.
A lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of blood. We kind of we wanted to make the Deadite blood slightly darker, a darker red, I suppose, tone, and with some of the demons coming up, it ends up being like a dark black red, I suppose you could call it, really deep. We also have like an effects company that we work with who ends up doing a lot of the blood on set with us, because there's so much of it, and we're really busy getting all the elements together for the makeup effects, that we work with them, and they have huge, big, pressurized 20-litre kegs, like beer kegs of blood. And we end up making all the rigs and the tubing and do all the effects side of it. And we've standardised a whole lot of connections. And when we get there on set, we end up plugging in with all the blood guys. So there's a lot of times when we show up and everyone's like, oh man, they get their mops and they get all the stuff off, and it's like, oh dude, those guys are turning up again, it's like with their barrels of blood. So the blood itself, there's quite a few different formulas depending on what we're using it for, really. Wardrobe obviously wants something that doesn't stain too much, and that they can easily, turn around and recycle clothes and all sorts of things like that. Makeup want things that you can have in your mouth, have in your eyes, and then we've just got our general sort of blast blood, we call it, which is blood we can put in mortars and blast on, into backdrops, or we can put in dummies and mannequins and rigs and stuff. So the blood's a big deal for sure. There is a lot of it, and there's a lot of different types, and there's actually it will vary between different demons, shall we say.
That's fantastic. It sounds like it's just a ton of fun to work on.
Enough explanation.
It sounds like a bloody good time. Well, for those of you guys watching live with us, we are going to be keeping an eye on the live chat, and we are also keeping an eye on the hashtag ABTV Evil Dead. So if you guys have any questions for our fantastic guests, feel free to reach out using those different tools. So Roger, I want to know what really goes into creating a Deadite, because every Deadite has a very specific and unique look, and you want to make them all distinctive, but at the same time, they all kind of have a very similar look to them as well.
Yeah, it's something that we've worked with the producers quite a lot with. Is actually, and we're probably going to keep going into series 2 with it. Is actually, initially we wanted to make the Deadites something that was possibly a generic thing. So, like when you become a Deadite, there was aspects of parts of it that would make everyone sort of look the same, I suppose you could say. And that ended up being sort of based on just the tone of the coloration, and sometimes we make them quite slimy and kind of a bit creepy depending on what their character's done. And then we basically get the backstory of the character and sometimes the situation and how they get killed and all the rest of it, and put it together, and we basically make a character design, I suppose you could call it, for each Deadite as we go along. Initially we thought we could potentially have a few that would be more generic, but as we went through the series, as the series sort of evolved, it meant that we're pretty much basing each Deadite on their own character, and then using a sort of a tonation between all of them, which is something that harks back to the films, to sort of link them all together and give them some sort of a look on themselves, and each of the ones kind of individualized a little bit. So there's a lot of work that goes into each Deadite, just as far as initial concepting, and sometimes we work with the writers and get a bit of a background story to it, and there's a lot more Deadites coming up. So you'll see that sort of unfold a little bit as the series goes along. You'll see parts of the way they were killed, or something that happened to the character come up in the way they're presented.
I can't wait to see that. So what's been your favorite Deadite to work on so far?
The one you've seen. The ones you've seen so far.
Yeah.
I think I really liked Mrs. Johnson. She's a fantastic lady in her 80s, and she had such a great face. to work on that just like doing the design and doing the sculpt and just her generally, you know. Sometimes you have this real thing when you're doing makeups and you meet someone and you're sort of apprehensive because, you know, they're in their 80s and you're like, we have to do makeups and you know, and then we've got stunt women and we made pull-on masks for them and all sorts of stuff for the stunt people. And I think it was just, it ends up being a combination of like the person and who you meet and the characterization of their face. That was really cool. So Mrs. Johnson was definitely one of my favourites as far as the design went. And then probably, I kind of like them all. They've all got their own little things. You know, I really like Mom.
Oh, poor Mom.
Over here we say Mom. Mom. Just because she had quite a good backstory about being killed, and we wanted her to sort of look like she sort of had come out of the water again, I suppose, where she'd been killed in her car and she'd been possessed, and she came back. So that was kind of nice. And yeah, I don't know. They all have their own little things, but I think probably Miss Johnson, just because it was such a great experience working with her. Yeah.
Well, and we saw in tonight's episode and last week's our poor, dearly departed bookshop owner, and the work on that makeup I thought was phenomenal, because you've got little bits of, I think, what you're describing that we're gonna be seeing more and more of, about incorporating ways in which they died. Now we see the way he died, but seeing him come back as a Deadite with the full makeup, the eyes, the glass all over his face, the tongue flicking all over, and you know, while his head was still attached to the rest of him, was excellent. So my question, I guess, is when you say we're going to be incorporating little bits of the way that they died going forward, should we be expecting our Deadites to look gnarlier and gnarlier the further into this series we get?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, they all have their own... I mean, there's so much that happens. It's hard to tell you without giving too much away, but yes, I mean, they are all... they all end up being a product of how they get killed. So the makeups always reflect part of what's either gone around or their backstory or how they get killed. So there's some gnarly deaths for sure. And some of them are just pure Deadites, which is kind of cool too. Like they just have a pure sort of evil, twisted look, and it's more about how they start being manipulative.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can't wait. That's going to be so exciting.
It's hard to say too much because I keep forgetting we're only on Ep 4. So it's kind of, yeah. Yeah,
that's frustrating. It's got to be really hard not to give things away to people who are fans, especially because you guys worked so hard.
Yeah. And I was up at in the New York Comic-Con, and we had a lot of people asking, you know, lots of different questions. And we had quite a bit of, you know, we're doing publicity and quite a lot of media and stuff. And I kept going, oh man, I can't quite tell you about that yet. You know, sort of, it was quite frustrating. But you're in for a good ride, guys. You're in for a really good ride.
That's exciting. So what is the biggest challenge in terms of creating a look, either for a Deadite in its purest form or for when they possess a human? What's the biggest challenge? Is it the budget? Is it the time constraint? Is it the kind of troubleshooting which tones look best? What's the hardest thing when you go about designing?
Time at this stage, yeah. I mean, we had, you know, it's like this when you birth a show and you have a new show, and you know, and there's a lot of the producers have a lot of ideas that everyone wants to get in. So, you know, by the time you end up having scripts and getting talent and getting everyone in, it ends up becoming a time issue. You know, obviously there's always budget constraints around that, but you know, those are kind of a lot more easily managed in a way with how you design stuff. You've still got to have the person there. You still have to go through, I mean, pretty much everyone that we do a Deadite makeup on will take a full head impression and sometimes hands and stuff, and start from there and then break out and do molds, start doing sculpts, and it's quite a, you know, it ends up being quite a lengthy process with, you know, involving all the producers and stuff and looks and coming up with the design. So time at this stage, the main constraint's time on the first series. So we've got a bit more of a jump because we kind of know we've sort of been through that birthing process, so we know what the Deadites look like now. So we have that as a bit of a base that we can work off. We've got a really good handle, I think, on the tone of how they look, and everyone's really happy with the way they look and what happens during the series. There's a few, there's a few other creatures and demons and stuff which are coming up, which may end up going into season 2, and so it'll be interesting to see how all that the universe starts expanding. But yeah, it's always time.
Yep, time is money, especially in production. So, do we have any questions from the live chat?
No, not yet. I know, guys, come on, post your questions. I got it right here.
Sometimes our internet's a little sluggish in here, so we apologize, guys, if you guys are having trouble. But let's go ahead, and I do have one more question for you before we let you go. Looking forward to season 2, I was wondering if you could design anything for season 2, be it Deadite or specific costume or weapon. If you could design anything for season 2, what would you want to bring to the show?
More from the underworld.
Yeah.
More demons, more creatures, more crazy, not in sort of collaboration with Deadites. That's what I'd like. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, thank you, Roger, so much for joining us. Do you guys have any final questions before we let him go?
I'm just very excited to see the things that you're hinting at that we're going to see for the remainder of the season. So I guess if I had one more question, just based on the little hints that you've dropped, if there is let's say a hierarchy in the Deadite underworld, where does Eligos rank? Is he, I would assume since we're seeing him this early, he's not high
low
command.
On the pecking order.
Is he in fact small potatoes? And how braced should I be? How terrified should I be for what I am going to experience in the weeks to come?
Yeah, I think he's like a middle tier. I don't think he's in the middle somewhere, because he's got a few powers. He could be pretty crazy, I think, if he got loose. So I think he's a middle tier, but I wouldn't put him right at the top, man. We got a lot more ideas.
All right.
I'm excited and a little scared.
And I have said this before, so I don't mind saying it again. But the only kind of hint I could give about what's coming up, I suppose, which is a little bit abstract, but it's kind of nice, is the 3 Bs, right? So it's burning, book, and birthing. There you go.
Birthing.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that sounds exciting.
I was hoping one of those bees would be boomstick, but I mean,
he's already mentioned the boomstick.
The boomstick.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, so burning, birthing, and book. Mm-hmm. There you go.
That's one hell of a tease. That's exciting. Lacretia, do you have any other questions?
I think I'm good. I'm just excited to see the Deadites that are going to look like how they died, because we all know that one of them's going to have a chainsaw on their head, right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, Roger, do you have any other upcoming projects that you'd like people who are watching the show to know about?
Yeah. We've been working on MTV Shannara. And that's coming out in January, I think, and that should be pretty cool. We're working on quite a few New Zealand films at the moment, doing prosthetic work down here, which sometimes don't always get out into the States. They have a general release here. What else have we been working on? Oh, we've been working on Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 2, which is coming out on Netflix. Which should be pretty cool, and it's quite a bit of stuff. Yeah, but those are probably Shannara. That would be pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, where can people go online if they want to keep up with all your projects?
Probably our website, which is Main Reactor. That's our company's name, mainreactor.co.nz. or you could go onto Facebook under Main Reactor.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Roger.
Facebook's probably the best.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We
Thanks, guys.
really appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
All right. Speak soon. Okay.
Have a great night. Thanks again. Oh, that was so cool. He seems like such a cool guy.
I know. I wanted to say catch you on the flip flop, but I'm like, do we do that here?
You can say catch you on the flip flop.
I love that line.
It's a funny line.
Yeah, he's working on new catchphrases. I like that.
I think he's trying to test
Yeah.
the waters, see what works with the kids.
Yeah.
What do the kids think is cool these days?
Yeah.
Catch you on the flip flop.
Flip.
Well, Elena's gonna make a bunch of T-shirts before the season's out, so we've got that to look forward to.
I think when evil shows up, it blows up. Is
Yeah,
a
that was
no-brainer
my
at this
favorite
point.
That was a pretty good one. Okay, I want to talk about Amanda and Ruby.
Who we finally know who Ruby is.
We finally and I gotta say, I mean, it was probably the most obvious answer, but at the same time, I'm still like pointing at the TV, going, "Yes!"
Yep.
We finally find out she is in fact Annie's sister.
Professor Nobi's daughter.
Exactly. So it was her family that was at the cabin, and Ash, he's not responsible for her parents' death, but
She thinks he is.
She thinks he is, very much so. And she has his hand.
I was so excited to see his hand.
That was so cool.
Give me back my hand.
And so she's just presumably, she says it's been dormant for 30 years and it just started twitching again. So I guess she's just had Ash's hand in a box and she'll occasionally check, nope, not moving. Put it
Nope.
back, go about her life for another couple of years.
I'd expect it to be more in a glass case, like,
Sure.
you know, so she could look at it all day long and remind her that this is the guy that killed my family.
Yeah, and it's interesting that she does very much blame him for what happened, but at the same time has never found him in these 30 years, has only had his hand to go off of. And to be fair, if we're assuming that Army of Darkness actually did happen, he did go back in time for a while.
Yeah.
And even if Army of Darkness didn't happen, which it may or may not have rights issues
He
pending.
still would have had to come back from the past somehow.
True. But he also, if we are to believe any part of his ayahuasca trip, it seems like he went all over the country from Value Mart to Value Mart, which might have made him a little difficult to track. Although, if he's transferring store to store to store to store, is there not a paper trail?
Is he? Yeah, I guess he's just staying at the same chain and it's just going to different locations.
And I just want to know, like, did Value Mart buy out S Mart?
That's the
yeah.
story they're going with, since I
No.
believe they can't
They
use
can't
S-Mart because
say
Yeah.
S-Mart because of
Yeah.
stupid licensing stuff. Universal.
So the story they always fall back on is, well, yeah, it's a national chain.
Yeah.
And they bought out the smaller store years ago, and so yeah, Value
Yeah,
Mart.
the I did like how at the beginning of when they're showing the map that you actually do see Grand Rapids, Michigan. Like I was
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, I know, I get that, I understood that reference. That's fantastic. So Amanda and Ruby, much like we were predicting, they have officially teamed up and they are on the hunt to go and find Ash. And I gotta say, it was fantastic seeing them take down Lionel together.
Poor Lionel.
Poor Lionel.
Decapitated and head popped like a grape.
It was crushed like a tomato can.
Yeah.
It was just a big mess all over the place.
But that's the best part of the Evil Dead franchise is all the big bloody messes.
And there are, if that's what you're looking for, you've come to the right show. And I'm so excited. So, okay, moving on from Amanda and Ruby, because I'm sure I can't wait to get more of what Jill was talking about, their Thelma and Louise quest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the only bummer with like these episodes being 30 minutes is that I feel like with what we get from their storyline, I want more. And
Sure.
it's great that it leaves me wanting more, but at the same time I'm like, how long until next week?
I know, I was so frustrated that they were only 30 minutes. I was like, we can't get an hour? I mean, Jesus, come on, Starz.
I mean, I suppose the flip side is it's pacing for one thing, and I guess two, it's also production value. Maybe by having the episodes be shorter, they can increase the production value for each episode and put more money into each 30-minute episode than having to take away money to account for an hour-long episode.
So if we want more blood and deadites, we got to stick with our 30 minutes.
Imagine what they could do with 5 minutes. Imagine how jam-packed and gory those episodes
just
would
vines.
be at 5 minutes.
Like, just a bunch of vines.
It's just a montage. It's a 5-minute montage of just chainsaws and boomsticks.
I don't know what's happening, but it looks great.
And magical swords, apparently.
Crazy.
Which I was a little disappointed we didn't get more of like the mystical weapons that she clearly has at her disposal.
I know.
So
Because
I'm-
she's Xena, warrior princess.
Exactly.
Well, I'm wondering if that's not meant to be the same dagger from Evil Dead 2, because it looks almost identical.
The one that stabbed Annie in the back?
The one where the hand, comes out of nowhere and kills her at the end.
That's... I hate that dagger so much.
I hate the hand.
Poor Annie. Oh, poor Annie. She doesn't get nearly as much credit in this franchise as she deserves.
No, I feel like in the pantheon of Ash's ladies, I feel like Annie tends to get skipped over pretty frequently.
She does, because it's all about his girlfriend Linda, who obviously gets turned into a Deadite and gets killed, and then like his lady friend in Army of Darkness, and Annie
Sheila.
gets
Sheila's a medieval
ignored.
name.
Annie gets ignored,
Yeah.
and it's so unfortunate because she's the one that banishes the Deadites in the first place.
She's the most proactive, and she actually, I would say, until we get to where we are in the story now with Ash vs. Evil Dead, the closest Ash has to an equal as far as combating evil.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, she doesn't last all that long.
No. But even so, with her dying breath, she banishes evil.
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to seeing more from them. That's going to be fantastic. Switching gears, talking about our main crew of Deadite divas. I'm going to keep pushing that. I'm going to keep pushing that as long as I can.
Hashtag Deadite Divas.
Hashtag Deadite Divas. So we have Kelly, who, as we come to find out, and actually we had a commenter on Twitter earlier this week. I'm gonna have to look for it, but somebody pointed out the fact that actually Kelly didn't they actually took a screen cap of after she hit the demon and was like shot back. Like there was this screenshot of a little bit of smoke lingering around her head.
I caught that in the recap when we watched it tonight.
Yeah, I wish I can find it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm having trouble looking for it. But then, to whoever caught that, that was awesome. Thank you. I will go back and tweet at you later. But that was really clever that they caught that. And we kind of suspected that Elagos wasn't quite gone. But at the same time, we weren't sure how he was going to manifest. How did you guys feel about the way he came back in this episode?
Oh, man. Kelly's life has not been great lately, is my immediate thought. But yeah, I guess it didn't occur to me, maybe it should have, but that he's also, in addition to everything else that Elagos is, he's also a possession demon, which is interesting. I'm wondering, because he was just described in our conversation as being maybe, let's say, mid-tier. Is it a hierarchy of ability? Like, do you work your way up the ladder? Like, possession is like entry-level Deadite stuff, and he's got that. He's totally got it covered. He barely ever uses it.
He's like, I haven't done that since my internship.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, well, all right. But so seeing him possessing Kelly and seeing Kelly lash out at her friend, not maybe lash out is the wrong word, but work against Pablo and work against Ash. Very troubling. It made me sad.
It did. It's unsettling. We know that Deadites can be vanquished, but we know it's not an easy road to go down.
No, usually the person dies.
Yeah.
When you vanquish the Deadite.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, they're kind of portraying Kelly to be the strong woman, so I don't really see her dying. Well,
I don't
I'm
think that's
curious
gonna
to
happen.
see how that is going to play out. Like, I mean, since she's obviously, she watched her parents die, and it's just like, whatever. I like that.
Well,
Yeah.
ever since Ash kind of latched on to two other people, like it's kind of everybody, even he to an extent, is kind of like, okay, when are the people around him going to get possessed by Deadites?
Sure.
Because these are now people that he is invested in, people that he cares about. So it's like it's only a matter of time until it happens to one of them. Just a question of who, or if it's both of them, or how long. And sure enough, it ended up being Kelly.
Sure.
So I do want to say that I did like that they went for a little bit of a different approach with the way that she was possessed, like in terms of the look. Like her eyes were black instead of the kind of Deadite, dead gray look that they normally have.
Yeah, she didn't have the full makeup on, which makes it obviously a lot easier for Eligos through her to maneuver and do what he needs to do, which is why at the end of the episode he gets as close as he does to actually finishing Ash off. Which also made me sad.
Do you guys want to talk about Ash's trip?
Oh boy, do I.
Oh, that's the best part.
His spiritual journey for inner peace or something.
So they go to the Brujo for guidance, for help, for pointers on how to fight the Deadites, and Brujo's plan is you're going to take an ayahuasca trip.
See, that's how we rule in the South.
Makes sense. Doesn't sound like there are any ramifications to that sort of journey, right?
No, I mean, it'll be a funky day or so, but after that, you know, he should bounce back fine.
Yeah, ayahuasca's like 12 hours, I think, trip max, but I love that he went to Jacksonville, Florida, a place that
That's
is
his happy
so
place.
beautiful. It's called Jacksonville. If you've ever been to Jacksonville, Texas, you know that is not true.
Yeah, the fact that have either of you guys seen Book of Mormon?
Yes.
It reminded me a lot of when the main character in that play is like Orlando. But yeah, Florida's not really anything to get excited about for anybody who's never been. No offense to anybody who lives there, but I'm not really a fan.
No, but I love that it's Jacksonville, not because Jacksonville is even that great a place. It's
He's
that
never been.
He's never been. And he never went because he was going to go, and then he went to that cabin. So that to him represents the last point in his life before his life was full of the undead.
Yeah, it's less about Jacksonville as a place and just more of what his life would be like if this horrible thing had never happened to him.
Yes.
He'd still have both hands.
Yep. He could hold 2 beers.
Yeah, he could double fist it. It'd be great.
And then he could just like dress up in an Elvis costume, wind up in an old folks' home. I mean,
Talk to Black JFK.
Yeah, exactly.
Fight zombie mummies.
Fight mummies,
Yeah.
right? In like, was it a cowboy outfit?
Yes.
I believe it was
Bubba
a
Hotep.
Bubba Hotep, I believe his descriptor is ancient Egyptian cowboy zombie mummy.
And why
That
wasn't there a
movie.
sequel? Don Coscarelli.
Yeah, he was supposed to come back.
And Bubba Nosferatu, and it never happened.
Yeah. So disappointing.
I will say that I think my favorite part of the entire ayahuasca trip, and there were several wonderful elements to it, I think my favorite part of the ayahuasca trip is talking Eli with his human teeth.
Yeah.
The lizard,
that was funny.
The lizard with human teeth was very bizarre.
I just love that he has the pet lizard named Eli. Like, that's just an interesting little thing to add to the show. And then, you know, of course, talking animals are always weird, but let's make it a lizard. Yeah.
Are you a boy or a girl?
just
Oh, yeah,
looks
like I
at
love
him.
that's the question.
And that's the question that Eli doesn't answer. He just gives him a...
Like, is that any of your business, Ash? Really? Really? Thought we were cool, man. But I will say that I actually really enjoyed a lot of the way, and granted, it can be a little bit jarring because the footage is very old, but like seeing the old film interspliced, and it's
Yeah.
really great watching these episodes with subtitles on,
Sure.
because you catch a lot of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily just watching it normally. But seeing the visuals and the audio from the old films intercut with this mental journey that he's taking, I thought was really cool as well.
All the other weird stuff. He sees the Charlie's Angels logo.
Felix the cat.
A little bit of I Dream of Jeannie, some Playboy covers. Yeah.
Those are things that make him happy.
Well, I mean, that's part of what the Brujo says is like his biggest downfall is a lack of self-awareness. He is a big child who kind of refuses to grow up in certain ways. He's kind of stuck in this one sort of mental state because it's a way to not deal with the thing that really happened to him.
Right. Well, we talked a little bit about, I think it was the last episode where he finally decided, yeah, I'm not going to be a lone wolf anymore. I'm going to run with the pack. And we talked about it for a second. That's maybe the first bit of growth, of development as a person that he's had in 30 years.
Well, I mean, we don't want him to develop as a person. I mean, I watch for
sure.
the cheesy lines. I'm like, please don't grow a conscience and care about
Swallow
people
this.
and act like an adult. God, I'll quit watching this show.
And it kind of this episode kind of touches on why he acts that way, though. Like the fact that his instinct is to shoot first, ask questions later, or to think about the consequences later,
Or never.
Yeah. It's just better to not think about the things that he's doing, because if he thinks about the horrible things that he's dealing with on a consistent basis, he'd probably be paralyzed with fear like he was in Evil Dead 1. He's just standing there in abject horror, not actually getting anything done, not taking chainsaws to Deadites, which is what he's meant to do.
But then he gets punched in the face, and it all clicks into where it's got to go.
He gets himself in gear. It's great. I do want to. Roger was talking about manipulations for the Deadites, and I do want to touch on the fact that Elagos was not only able to manipulate Pablo very easily. That's not a big deal, but I thought it was very interesting the way. Like, Ash, in his own mind, when he's on this journey, becomes self-empowered. And the moment he empowers himself to fight back, that's when Elagos switches gears and is like, okay, I can manipulate him into hurting his friend.
Yeah.
And he almost kills Kelly in the middle of the state. And for poor Ash, who's on this mental journey, he's like, I'm fighting back. I'm pushing back the darkness, when in fact he's hurting his friend. And it's very unsettling that the Deadites can do that. You think, and it reminds me of Evil Dead 2, when he's just kind of going insane and you don't know what's real. It makes me wonder how much more of that we're going to see this season.
Sure. Well, especially if we are to believe that Elagos is middle management. What can his bosses do if he can already do that? Terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. It's exciting.
I want to touch really quick on Pablo's idea to surprise Ash with a new hand and how unbelievably sweet that is.
That is
so
adorable. And he's putting it together so that it's a legit robot hand.
A robot with it's gonna have a screwdriver on it and a light source, apparently.
Well, and I love that Pablo can do that when he's been portrayed as nothing other than a moron until now. And I'm like, whoa, he's like, is he a savant? He's just like playing with this robot hand. I'm like, what? Out of nowhere.
Well, everybody writes him off. They either think that he doesn't invest any, like his uncle. He thinks Pablo is just wasting his time. Ash probably thinks he's young and naive, which he is, and Kelly thinks of him as her little brother. But we haven't really seen what he's capable of yet. And seeing this, and even watching Evil Dead 2, I would never guess that in Army of Darkness, Ash would have been able to make himself a makeshift robot hand. Groovy.
Well, we're still under the assumption that might not have been real.
Maybe he just hit his head after the events of Evil Dead 2 and just dreamed he went back in time.
The portal at the end of Evil Dead 2 is just a big vacuum, and it sucked him out into the woods. He hits his head on a tree, and he's just in the woods for 2 days.
And he's just like, I'm the hero of time.
Yeah, like he totally ate the wrong mushrooms in the woods, or the right one, whichever you lean. But yeah, and that's what happened.
That would make for a very different movie. That could be like the third alternate ending for Army of Darkness. That would be fantastic. Well, we are getting towards the end of the show. We are running a little short on time. Is there anything you guys want to touch on real quick before we go into predictions for next week?
I think the only stuff that I want to touch on, I can touch on in predictions.
All right, let's go ahead and roll into predictions then.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So, for the very first time, I think, in Evil Dead history, we are actually seeing a legit, well, technically in the remake to an extent, but we are seeing an attempted exorcism.
Yeah.
For a Deadite next episode. How do we think that's going to go down?
I hope for Ash's sake, not the way the teaser implies it might.
Just no feeling from the waist down.
No, but he doesn't like that idea. I don't blame him.
That is the worst idea. No.
No.
How about you? What do you think?
I know we touched on this earlier, but I'm just hoping that they have a lot more little bits and jokes from the movies. I mean, definitely more like Three Stooges type, Ash stuff. And I can see, they're really, playing with the fandom of the series. So, yeah, I'm hoping for more just slapstick Ash.
So since this is the first episode we've had you on, what's been your favorite slapstick moment then? Because my favorite was just him throwing himself around when the little Lori doll was attacking him in the pilot.
That was pretty funny, but my favorite is honestly the opening of the pilot when he's getting ready. I mean, it's just classic, slapstick and putting on the corset. That was just, oh man.
Where he's dancing and doing the power tries to pump himself up and whatnot, yeah.
It's like that.
Oh, yeah. Emma's dream for where the series goes involves going back to the cabin. Where would you want the series to go, apart from the cabin?
Apart from the cabin. I don't know. Maybe we can go back to the Middle Ages, even if it's just another ayahuasca trip. Or there's plenty of other hallucinogenic drugs he could do.
Now that we've had this episode, I kind of want him to go to Florida and go, meh.
Yeah, go to Jacksonville.
My life's not that bad, actually. Well, that just about does it. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we wrap up for the evening?
There's one thing I want to hit. In his fantasy, at one point before Elagos shows up in his head and all hell breaks loose, the book appears in his hand, and talking Eli the lizard with his human teeth tells him that he has to bury it deep beneath where his journey started. My guess is they're going back to the cabin.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did like that when Elagos was there also, it was surrender Ash. And I know we kind of finished talking about Ruby and Amanda, but when we first got introduced to Amanda, the Deadite said, "We know who you are." And then when we get, our team up in this episode, Lionel turns to Ruby and says, "We know who you are. And then she cuts off his head. So I'm wondering if she actually is who she says she is, or if there's not a little bit more to her story about being, the professor's daughter, about Annie's sister. So I'm wondering if there's not a little bit more to it than all that. And so, yeah, because it seems like a really weird, intentionally abrupt sentence. Because if it was just, you're the professor's daughter, would have said, oh, yeah, we killed your family. It was hilarious. And I feel like she would have just cut off his head and stomped on him the same way. But the fact that they intentionally cut it off, I'm like, I feel like there's a little bit more there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know what, because that was my guess, was that she was the professor's daughter. So that's all I got. That's all I got for now.
Oh, no, I think she's Xena Warrior Princess.
Fact. I believe that's what we said, actually. Yeah. We know who you are, Xena Warrior Princess. Well, I guess that just about does it for tonight. Lex, where can people go if they want to keep up with you?
I am all over the interwebby, netty, talky stuff at the Lex Michael.
And if you can spell my name right, it's LACRETIALYON. Find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you can check me out here at AfterBuzz Sundays at 5:30 p.m. PST with the General Hospital after show, and then also for the Castle after show Tuesdays at 4 p.m.
Fantastic. And again, for those of you guys watching, please be sure to follow Elena and Emma on Twitter at Elena Jordan and at Emma Fife. That's with F's, not S's. Please be sure to wish them well while they're on their journey, again, having an awesome time. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who was on the hashtag, everybody who was on the live chat. Always fun talking to you guys. I'm Megan. You can follow me on Twitter at TheMenguin. That's TheMenguin. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to AfterBuzz on iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, all that fun stuff. Rate, leave a comment. We want to know what you guys think about this show and what you guys want from the rest of the season. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Catch you on the flip-flop.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.